Okay, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead, pour white lightning straight on your brain. Today's white lightning is back to Wheel of Time, back to Eye of the World, going through the book.
Yeah,
And
we left off somewhere in 16 or chapter 17, I believe, for those that are
as
reading
it was
along.
right around chapter 16, Nyneave had showed up. I think we talked a little bit about her showing up, but there was something
Mhm.
else I wanted to talk about there. Also, we teased talking about Padan Fain because you meet him again, and we kind of skipped over it last time, and he's acting crazy.
Mhm.
And we don't want to get too deep in it because we don't want to spoil things.
Yeah, the only thing we're
Um,
going to spoil is he's an important character as we go on.
yeah, because we will see him again. It is a minor rant on the show again because one of your big gripes was how you don't see him again until the very last episode, and he's
Regal.
already some. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and you miss everything in between. There's you know J- Jordan is great at building and layering, right?
Mhm.
So Padan Fain's going to get somewhere, and Jordan's going to show you the steps he took along the way, and you're not going to know how he's going to end up,
Mhm.
but you're going to see that he's changing, things are happening, and you see that with almost all the characters. um there are a few characters that are very rigid and don't really change,
Mhm.
um almost always to their detriment.
Yeah, and in the show you see him sneaking away during that first battle in when Moraine's taking out the Trollocs in the first episode, and he's already kind of smug and glib there.
Hmm.
Uh, but then it was even worse when you see him again all the way in the last episode. Uh, but in where we're at in the book, he's kind of manic. He's all over the place. He's afraid of something, but it's almost like he's afraid of a lot of things.
Hmm.
He's afraid to talk to Rand. He's afraid to tell him anything. He's afraid of Moraine. He's obviously afraid of something else, and
Yeah.
it's so you've got this really broken down person that almost looks like he wants to reach out for help at this point, but he doesn't know what to do.
Well,
And
yeah, in that scene, one of the cool images of the scene is he's reaching out to Rand like he wants to grab hold of his coat, um, pleadingly, but then he flinches away like he's afraid to touch
Mhm.
Rand. Um, and one one of the great things about the character is it's such a stark contrast, but if you want to get a little real world, he is clearly someone who has a very narcissistic personality when you
Mhm.
first meet him. He's loving the attention. Okay. Well, that's the problem. If you're extremely narcissistic, you're extremely fragile.
Mhm.
When something breaks that narcissism, you just shatter. And, here's Padan Fain, who's, you know, the cock of the walk, the rooster strutting around, loving the attention. And now he has fallen on absolutely hard times, shall we say.
Mhm.
He's lost everything.
And now he's
His
almost like a dog that was abused as a puppy. When you reach
mm,
toward it, it kind of shies away, but it wants to come out, and then uh, and also that same dog is a danger to bite
mhm.
because they may overreact to that situation out of fear, and that's where he's at right now. Is he went from you know the the spotlight to this broken down person in basically 10 chapters, and we don't know what happened in between. We'll find out later, so i'm not
Uh-huh.
gonna
Yep.
i'm not gonna spoil anymore. So
Um,
that's kind of where we'll leave him, I think.
so chapter 16 um opens up because when Nyneave showed up, I think we talked about her interaction with Rand and the change and the interesting bits there. But then when I was looking back to get ready, chapter 16 opens up with Min being awesome. Um, where She urgently needs to talk to Rand about something. Um, and she basically tells the others to get lost. Because she has something important to say. And when she tells Rand that Nynaeve is part of it. And it annoyed me because one of the great failings of the show is they did what all modern woke writers do, which is marginalized people cannot have faults.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to show a strong female character, she has to be perfect. That's how she's strong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's boring and stupid and makes for terrible writing. It's why the Star Wars sequels were terrible. It's why Captain Marvel was one of the worst performing movies of the MCU. And it was why I was shocked that that they actually made Leandrin the way she was in the series, because she is very. I guess that she's not flawed though, as so much as she's just antagonistic,
Mm-hmm.
which is different. But whereas,
well, they only made her flawed in respect to Moraine and the other.
Yeah,
You put her up
and
against any of the guys in there, she was over and head and shoulders above.
Min doesn't have any real power. She's clear, she's not very strong. She's a slim woman. She doesn't have the one power. She does have this gift of being able to see things, but it's not a power she can have over other people. And yet she's an incredibly strong character. And you're going to see that when she comes back up later in the series. She's an incredibly strong character in that she's very strong of will, very strong of personality. Um, and here you've got this giant blacksmith guy. You've got this, old wise man of the world Tom. She just tells him to, screw off. I've got something to say. So don't bother, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And that's how you write a strong character, is not someone who's perfect, somebody who is strong.
I'm going to add to that, because as we get more of Min in the future here, and this isn't a spoiler, other than the fact that she's going to be in the book as we go, is you see that where all the instances that strong will got in the way, that strong will made her weaker. Her stubbornness would get in the way, just like all the main characters, because stubborn is the theme, and she's not far removed being in Baerlon. So two rivers, and then just a slight step down in stubbornness going to Baerlon. So you do see that what we see as a strength right now become a weakness later, which is another good sign of good writing of a character, because a lot of times you have to overcome that obstacle that your habits get in the way of. Continue. You wanted to talk about Nyneave.
I think I just thought of an analogy, and tell me if this works. I think I talked way back about the that documentary on Ronnie Coleman. I think it was on Netflix for a while. And here's the difference between like strong, real strength, and excessive strength that is the strong female character of the modern writing. All right. That documentary was kind of depressing. Now you pointed out that, well, he wouldn't trade it for the, what was he, 5 times in a row, Mr. Olympia or whatever he was. Well, because of what he did to himself, the man can't walk. Okay. You look at pictures of him when he was Mr. Olympia, especially before he started to get that bloated look, and you're like, holy crap, that's a strong dude. You look at the picture of him squatting 800 pounds. That's a strong dude. And now you look at him, he's much thinner. He's got canes on each arms to help him walk, and it's pretty depressing, but that's what that kind of strength did. And when we talk about strong, especially when we talk in terms of fitness and we talk about normal people doing strength training,
Mhm.
that's not what we mean. We mean pushing yourself a little bit more every time. It means, you know, lifting heavy weights under a strain, not, you know, not dangerously so, but very uncomfortably so. You know, a strong character is someone who's going to be in an uncomfortable situation and withstand it. Oh man, that's a great
For those in the
side by
audience that,
side.
well, I had to do this because, not to stereotype, but most Wheel of Time readers aren't going to
Yeah.
be Mr. Olympia followers. So this is who he's talking about if you are not familiar with bodybuilding. But the number's 8. The number is
Okay,
8.
I knew it was a lot.
8 consecutive Mr. Olympias. By the way,
Yeah.
bodybuilding is not a healthy sport.
Nope.
Do it if you want to achieve such a goal, but if you are lifting for health, there are better ways to do it, and we can help you. DM me.
Yeah.
All right.
So in fact, an analogy that's used several times in the series, especially around Perrin, because he's a blacksmith, is the difference between strong and hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're making metal and you make it hard, you make it brittle. If you make it strong, it has a little bit of malleableness to it. Like a good weapon, the metal is actually a little softer than like a cast iron, which is very hard. It's also very brittle. So if you hit it hard enough, it'll shatter, even though it's incredibly strong. And I just kind of popped into my head of the difference between a real strength and the faux strength. You know, the brittleness that doesn't really work and is kind of boring to read. It's I think why it doesn't connect.
That's not a bad analogy. Yeah, to take that analogy a step further, when you look at Ronnie Coleman and you're thinking of your own training, it's almost so disconnected you get disheartened.
Mm.
So you want to put this role model forward to give people hope, just like with your super strong female characters, but it's so disconnected that it almost has a reverse effect to some degree. Maybe a little faux effect in the beginning. You know, get into the gym for the first month going lightweight and go. But then when you don't get anywhere near those results, because not only was he an exceptional human being, but he was also enhanced exceptional human being. Both of those things together. So you already have top 0.0001% of the gene pool adding to his genetics. And when you're doing your thing naturally and being in whatever spectrum of the gene pool you are when it comes to muscle mass, you're going to go, oh, it's not worth it. It almost has a reverse effect at that point. And you need to find examples that are more realistic. And again, that's why more people were inspired by Alien than they were by Marvel, Captain Marvel. So it's almost yeah, it does make a good analogy, but I think you have to take it that step further.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also think, you know, while we're here accidentally talking about psychology, I think that's why fan bases get so vehement. Like the people who actually do defend the Star Wars sequels or Captain Marvel or whatever, they do it viciously. They do it almost psychotically. They do it almost cult-like because they have clung so hard to that, because they need that to be true for their own validity versus someone who might be initially entertained or by this art or attracted to this character, and then it wears thin. I mean, you can see that with the Star Wars box offices where the Force Awakens and then less, and then by the time you got to the third movie, it was half the box office of what the Force Awakens did. So
you look. So I'm going to take this a step further, and this is we're not psychologists, but we play one on TV. look at who gets the most vehemently mad, and this is a connection to kind of the Twitterverse too. It's who lives in reality and who lives in fantasy. So when I see the superheroes and they kind of inspire me to some degree, it's like, well, what about them makes them awesome, and how can I be more like that? So I don't understand admiring, Captain America and not wanting to be fit. But you see your typical, Simpsons comic book guy, they obviously live in a fantasy world when it comes to superheroes, but in a completely different world when it's their own life. They live vicariously through that person, or that fake person. And so that's the kind of person that gets vehemently mad when you insult their hero, versus someone who lives in the real world and you give a legit criticism of that hero they admire. They're gonna be like, yeah, he's flawed in that way, but this is what makes him awesome. And I think that's the kind of the difference. And you see that in the Twitterverse. These people are not connected to reality when it comes to anything. Some of them aren't even real. So so that attack comes, and you gotta say, oh, you just gotta stay grounded yourself. And so it's a different kind of personality.
Yeah. When we're ripping apart the series, it's not because we're so emotionally invested in the books that the series hurt us on a psychological level. No, it's because it was crap, and this is really good. The source material is some of the best writing that I've ever read. It's some of the best world creation that I've ever read. So you have this great source material. It's like if I gave you, Wagyu beef, and you just boiled it. I'm like, what? Why would you do that? What? I would just give bland boiled beef when I gave you Wagyu. What are you doing? It doesn't make sense.
Or giving someone like Noah's Mill or some Michter's or something, and they mix it with Coke. No, at most an ice cube. Come on.
Okay.
We got to move on if we're going to get to Shadar Logoth, because I got 45 minutes.
Yep. That's fine. So I do like chapter 17. There's not a ton to talk about there, but it is a really nice chapter, because
I got something to talk about in 17.
Okay, you see the characters being people. That's
why it's exactly what it was, because the dance scene. And this would have been, I think, something that would have helped in the show too, because you would have seen, again, it brings out the country bumpkin versus the lady. They start tripping over their feet once they realize she's dancing too, and they all of a sudden just lose everything about their composure. So that was a good scene for me. But is that what you're going to add also to
it? The Rand and Egwene are still kind of in a tiff, and it shows. It's why them just jumping straight in the sack in the series was so annoying. Is you have no complexity of the relationship there. This is a puppy love, right? And now this puppy love is running headfirst into the brick wall of real life and reality. And they're kind of caught there. They're also both very strong-willed, stubborn people. So Jordan's creating a sexual and emotional tension there, which is telling you more about these characters. It's also getting you more involved with these characters. It's pulling you in, because it's not the, oh, well, they're already jumping in the sack. Okay, well, now here at the end of the series, we have this very fake, contrived drama. And no, he's giving you something real here so that you care about these two characters as we go forward and as they become more and more important and you see more of them.
Which fate plays a huge role in the books. And they kind of did something in the show, but it was so lazy. Where we probably will get into it, because it becomes an issue when Min starts getting into all the philosophy and stuff, where what is the balance between fate and free will?
Yeah.
It's the free will discussion, realistically.
Yeah.
And so that becomes an actual discussion later, even though everything is by all, if she can see the future, obviously there's fate, right?
Mhm.
If dreams can do things with the future, obviously there's fate. If there's a wheel of time and there's a turning of the age, there's obviously fate. But how does that play into your real life, and what control do you have over that becomes one of the major themes. And in fact, the breaking down of the fabric of time was one of the major things that explained a lot of things in the books, and they didn't do any of that in the show. Things like Perrin and the wolves, they make absolutely no sense in the show other than it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. They don't even try to explain it.
Yeah, and maybe they will, but it's going to be a monologue later, just like they did with so many other things. They're just going to have somebody say, hey, this thing happens, and it happened to you. And he's going to go, oh, cool, I thought I was crazy, and everything's going to be all right. But I think we went on a huge tangent there.
Yeah, but it was a worthwhile tangent.
Yeah.
The something Jordan does a good job of doing very early on is giving you the rules of the magic of the world, and you see that again as they're escaping Baerlon, that they need to hurry away because she just let any dark thing around know, hi, here I am, because she just used a big chunk of the power. And now, but they don't know exactly where she is because they're burning the inn, and so they can make their getaway. So that is something that will come up. It's also something important because he's establishing early on a limiting factor of there are always trade-offs. Okay, so we're not just doing something here because it's cool. We're establishing the rules of the game, and so now the characters will have to decide if they're in a situation, especially here early on as they're running to Shadar Logoth. How much power can Moiraine use? You know, when they know they're being hunted, they're kind of being quartered and driven to something. So if I if I use my power to help us too much, drawing too much power will light too big a signal.
Well, there's something that happens before that, because we have the Fade encounter with Rand that I think is a little bit important. First of all, it's the first time we see a Fade talk. So they are in the intelligence comes out again in the show. All you see is him scream and the Trollocs go forward. You never have any interaction with a Fade. And then again, it just keeps it keeps pushing that theme of, we want you, we don't want to kill you, we want to take you.
You belong to the Dark One.
Okay, so now we're back to the power.
But you can also see that it is a creature of evil because it wants to kill. It's like it's having to physically restrain itself because it wants to cause pain and death, but there's a greater power over it that is restraining it. So what was it you wanted to talk about? I thought you had something on the way to Shadar Logoth. Because you know the next bit is more action oriented, as you know, the sounds of the horns, and they're getting closer and closer and closer.
Why I talked about the fact that Moiraine was the one who made the decision to go there and Lan was the one saying no, versus the other way around in the show. We get an important moment where when the Trollocs do get to him, Matt starts screaming the old tongue. So that was important. So if you wanted to go into that. But anything other than that specific, you'll have to remind me.
It would have been something really easy to do in the show too, since they were going so far out of their way and doing it badly to hide who the dragon was, to make you wonder who the dragon was. Here you have Rand and Perrin kind of looking side eye at Matt and thinking maybe it's him, maybe, and not that they know anything about the dragon yet, but maybe he's the one they're after.
Yeah. Why did he say that? What did he say, first of all?
Yeah.
And then
how did he say that?
Yeah.
And so you do learn a little bit more about the world, and it's connected back to something we've already established, which was the story of Manetheren and its fall. And so now you have that connection. You know a little bit more about the world of there is something very important about blood, about bloodlines, about what can pass through genetics in Jordan's world here. And then you also get a fight scene where clearly they're not great fighters yet, but they've been working on it. They're able to not completely get themselves killed or captured.
Well, and it shows that they're already skilled with their bows, because they all were. They've grown up a little bit because they're at least not afraid enough that they can actually draw and shoot, versus just standing there wide-eyed and not doing anything. Matt starts screaming out in the old tongue. We're seeing again that blurring of time, the fabric of time. So this is actually one of the first moments of the blurring of fabric of time. Now there is a genetic anomaly where you can pick up stresses of your parents, but this is across thousands of years though. So it's again that blurring of the fabric of time, and also the importance of not only the old blood, what they keep saying, but also the fact that these people are who they are, and they are centers of the weaving of the pattern. So it's breaking down. They're centers of it, and they have this old blood, so all this stuff keeps leaking through. And I think that's one of the most important themes, and that's one of the first moments you actually see it. And of all characters, it's the one that they seem to have written off in the show, which is Matt.
Yeah. You also get the binding of Trollocs to Murdral here, which is the first time you see that.
Yeah,
you get that cool scene, which would have been something really easy to show in the show, and I kept waiting for them to do it. So you get Land being cool here.
You could have done that in that first episode with the scene, because it could have been this battle where everything's going against them, and Land finally takes out a Murdral, and the night ends, and they get through it. So, but then you couldn't have Nyneave taken off, and you couldn't have you know, all those other things.
So they have the two encounters. Let's see where. Okay, that's so they had that first fight where the Trollocs are trying to hook them with the poles and capture them.
Again, another example of these things want to take them, not kill them.
Yeah, and then you have and they have the second encounter where you have so many more of them. There's no way they can fight. Where Moraine uses the Angreal and nukes them, and you see the effect of that. Now she doesn't have the power to do what her plan was, which was to put up a barrier to dark things around them with their backs to the river, while they constructed a raft and floated themselves across the river. Again, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And so you're establishing, you can do incredible things with the one power, especially if you're naturally strong, and or you have these items of power that let you enhance your power. But there's a trade-off. Now, this person who's so incredibly powerful is effectively helpless.
Mhm.
She she uses up the last bit of her power just doing the little trick of throwing their sense away down river. That's it. Now she's done. She's spent, and she can barely hold herself up in the saddle. And so that's when they have to enter Shadar Logoth.
Mhm. Uh, they brought up a couple interesting concepts there with the Trollocs not wanting to pass water.
Yeah.
Because their original plan was to get across the river.
Yep.
But obviously they got ambushed. But then we get into Shadar Logoth. So Moiraine sets the wards, explains everything to them. So that's kind of, important because she's out cold in the show. You don't get any of that. You just get her being dumped down and land making camp for the night.
And because she's been physically wounded, which I don't understand why you felt the need to give her this serious physical wound rather than explaining she's completely physically drained from the use of the power. That's something very important to establish, that it is this taxing. If you draw too much of it, it is this taxing that, she's as weak basically as Tam was, and he was recovering from a poison that had him on death's door. And that's how weak she is that she's like that now. Very important to establish. So not only does it set things up for later because you have this rule established, but now you have a way for the boys to go off and be dumb.
Yeah. So she sets up the wards, and I'm trying to find the spot where
credit where it's due. Although I am going to give it's going to be a backhanded compliment. One of my gripes about the show is that it looked cheap. Shadar Logoth did not look cheap. It looked good, and it looked basically how I would have envisioned it, how it looks in my head when I read, which is one of the incredible things about the Lord of the Rings movies, is that everything looked like you would imagine it. It had such a good look, and Shadar Logoth had that look of majestic in its grandness, and yet also incredibly creepy. Incredibly dark and creepy, like a gothic horror setting.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens here, and it wasn't in the show, and it again, it takes away from Padan Fain and the dagger. In the show, the dagger is just this thing that has evil to it, and it made Matt sick. But you don't even know why, and you don't know how important that is. So
do they ever explain in the show why Shadar Logoth is what it is?
No.
About how it shut itself in, and people came by later and there was nothing.
Yeah, and that's she tells the whole story, because remember, the boys go off and they meet Mordeth, and he's a treasure hunter, right, in the ruins, and they go back, and then Moiraine's like, where the heck did you go? Don't ever wander off again. And they're like, well, we thought it was safe. You said it was safe. Well, no, Trollocs won't come in here, but it's not safe. And she tells the whole story.
Trollocs are too afraid to come in here. So all they knew,
which is to tell you how unsafe it is.
All they knew is that Aridhol was an ally of Manetheren in the Trolloc Wars, and now Trollocs are afraid to come in here. So they, okay, well, if you're thinking shallowly, if you're not thinking deeply, if you're a dumb kid, okay, well, it's safe. Let's go exploring, because we've always dreamed and fantasized about exploring a city, and now we have an empty city. And
this is previously they were amazed at how big Baerlon was, and
yes,
Baerlon would be like
that's
a small town.
Rand has that thought of how dumb must Tom and Moiraine and Lan have thought we were to be so impressed by Baerlon if this is a real city, because there you have just a large mining town.
Yeah, and in perspective, the city they're in now, even though it's ruins, is more vast than even the biggest cities that they're going to go into that are alive, with the exception of maybe Tarvalon.
Yeah. This is a massive metropolis. This is like Rome at its heyday.
So they go off exploring. They meet the treasure hunter and end up going back because Mordeth went crazy, I think, because one of them said no or something like that. You've read it more recently.
Yeah, because they mention that he gets freaked out and mad because they mention that they're there with that they're there with an Aes Sedai.
And then she tells the whole history, and the important part being the deception, the corruption with the advisors. It was everybody kind of eventually getting each other's throats. Nice little parallel to what's happening nowadays over COVID, but if we really think about it, Jordan was ahead of his time. But then they all lay down to sleep, and then the shit hits the fan really after that.
Oh no, I found it. It was he realized he couldn't trick them because they realized he was creepy. Suddenly Rand realized that what had been nagging at him about the man, the scattered torches in the hallway, had given each of them a ring of shadows, just as the torches in the treasure room did. Only he was shocked. He was so shocked he said it out loud. "You don't have a shadow." And that's when they all get creepy, and that's when he tries to trick them. And then he screams at them that they're all dead, and he like turns into a thin line and disappears into a hole because, let's get creepy. So before the fog even shows up, you're setting up the creepy dangerousness here. And now Moraine's going to tell you how and why, where this came from.
And it's, even at this point, it's not even a spoiler to say to put two and two together that they talk to by name, because I think she even mentions it by name, the same entity that corrupted and killed this city. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what causes them to go out of the wards. Was it the Trollocs coming in, or was it Shadar breaking through the wards when they finally have to run again?
Oh, they have to run because the Trollocs are coming into the city. Okay. So she set up wards to keep the fog out so they could safely spend the night in the city. But they have to leave because, and this is, Lan is out scouting, and that's why the boys are off being dumb, because there's no one there to keep an eye on them. And he discovers that there are Trollocs out searching the city, and they're eventually going to kind of accidentally stumble across where they are. So they don't have a choice. So they're moving as fast as they can because they're scared to be in there, but it just so happens that there's a group that's going to pass dangerously close to them, so they need to leave. And
again,
so
remember, Moraine's kind of taxed right now, and she just set up even more powerful wards.
Also, I'm glad you mentioned the wards, because that's another point about the rules of the magic is that her wards have to be specific. She has set up wards that will hold back Shadar Logoth, but not the Trollocs. It's a different kind of evil. So they have to leave, and while they're trying to quietly sneak out, that's when the fog separates them. And then they have to run for it because there are Trollocs, and that's when they all get split up into three groups.
Well, it also brings forward another specificity of the power, because they ask Maureen, can't you just get rid of the fog in front of us so we can get back together? And she's like, no, I can't. This is beyond even my power, even if I wasn't weak at this moment. So
yeah, this is something very weird and different. You got me off track because you'd mentioned about the origins of Mordeth and when Aridhol became Shadar Logoth, and I like that. I don't think Jordan ever explains where he came from. So was Mordeth a normal human who was so corrupted that he became this thing, or was he already some sort of strange creature, and that's how he was able to help corrupt Aridhol?
And this is one of the good things about books, is you can have two different people read the exact same thing and take it a little differently. I took it from that he was a corrupt person that set something in motion that ended up being so corrupt it became something beyond him. That's how I read it.
Yeah.
But I could see it being thought of the other way too.
Yeah. And he doesn't go into those details because he likes to leave some mystery in some places, which I love. And
I think my thought on it plays into where this place becomes important again later, because it is this special thing, not something else that came into this place. If it was something else that came into this place, wherever that thing came from would be the key.
That's the good
place
point.
Itself.
And so here you have, so some of the large metropolises of the ancient world were estimated to have at least 100,000, if not 250,000 inhabitants. So say you have 100,000 or more people so completely focused on one thing, which is hating the shadow, hating the dark one. So focused on that they create something supernatural.
Well, not only that, you brought up an interesting point. So we have to have another episode on this, but the little tease for those that watch our political episodes as well. One of the keys to mass formation psychosis is a focal point. And so that's a little tease for later. That's all we'll go into it. But they were so focused on hating the shadow, but there was this force inside Aridhol. So we're speaking the books now, that was causing distrust from neighbor to neighbor to neighbor to neighbor, and it started from the top down. It was distrust from was it king or whatever down. So and
that's where Aridhol betrayed Manetheren and didn't go to their aid, because the city became convinced that they were the only true warriors against the dark, that everyone else was against them, or was secretly with the dark, or
it was literally xenophobia on steroids is what it was. It was true nationalism, like to the extreme that it could possibly go.
So extreme we're going to shut our gates to the outside world.
But then after they shut their gates to the outside world, there was nobody to hate except each other. And it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, until it created something supernatural. Trying to fight evil in such a way that they became a different evil is the point here. That Moiraine makes. Crap, I lost it.
Well, while you're looking for that, just for the listeners out there, we're not going down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole with the mouse formation psychosis thing. It's just the current buzzword for a phenomenon that's been around for a long time.
You started recording again?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I did not notice that you had hit the resume button. Sitting here scratching myself and.
Well, that's all right. I wanted to go ahead and put that in there because the words I used have been thrown into a camp, and we're not in a camp. We're just talking about a phenomenon that actually exists, and it's taken many forms over the course of history. That's why it's in Jordan's book, because he was a historian. And
yeah, go. I mean, it's the buzzword now. Go back to our first freaking episode, and I'm talking about the French dude and mob psychosis, because he was looking at how in the world did the French go so insane to create the terror and the guillotining of everybody in the French Revolution.
But the same phenomenon that I was bringing up exists with all of it, is the focal point. Look at the Salem witch trials. The focal point wasn't witches, it was the devil, right?
Well, if you dig into it, it was actually those people over there, because you've so
it becomes those people over there. That's what we just talked about with Aridhol. Well, it became everybody outside of it. It's the devil, and then you attach all these other traits to the devil. And
so speaking of the devil, there was something I remembered that I wanted to go back just a second, because we were talking about them getting split up by the fog. Before they even get on their horses and start to try and leave the city, so Land comes in and tells them that the half-men are to drive them, 4 to just to handle one fist, and even the Madral seem to want nothing more than to pass through the city and out as quickly as possible. They are not going out of their way to search, and they're so slipshod that if they were not heading nearly straight for us, I would say we had nothing to worry about. He hesitated. There is something else. Only this, Land said slowly. The Madral forced the Trollocs into the city. What forced the Madral? I like that creepy cliffhanger. And then now Tom cursed under his breath, and Egwene breathed a question. The Dark One? Don't be a fool, girl, Nyneave snapped. The Dark One is bound in the Shell Gold by the Creator. For the time being, at least, Moiraine agreed. No, the Father of Lies is not out there, but we must leave in any case. So he's planting the seeds of some really bad juju here, of what is out there, and this is something that's going to unravel in very, very interesting ways, that I don't think the characters ever even fully figure out. We'll see as we progress here.
I have guesses,
I don't want to say too much about it.
Yeah.
I
have guesses, but it would be a spoiler.
What is going on here? So, but definitely planting the seed of something much worse than the Madral even, and possibly the Dark One himself. So you're seeing the breaking down of that prison kind of in real time here.
And include here, because we also have history of the dreams with what the kids think is the Dark One.
Yes.
So there's also that at this point.
Did you want, was there anything you wanted to talk about the chapter 20 is kind of a longer chapter. It's when they split up and they all get separated. It's a good chapter. It's a hectic and frantic kind of chase. He writes it very well, so that you get the sense of this of the danger, and the kind of crazed fight or flight, and it's definitely flight.
Yeah, I think this is just your action scene. There's not a whole lot of depth in it, other than it's a lot of cool action.
And it is that the last part of it? Yep. And it ends with the introduction of one of our favorite side characters, Doobie Doobie Doo.
Oh yeah, yep. No, it ends with Moiraine and Egwene. No, she did not find Egwene in the boys.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So it ends with Rand all mad at himself that he should have tried harder to protect Egwene. So he still has that uh, that
I
feeling.
somehow got into 21. That's why.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So let's break it down because people are reading along with this if they haven't watched the show or read it with it. We got Moiraine and Lan and Nynaeve together, right?
Well, Moiraine and Lan, Nynaeve's get separated from everybody. Egwene, actually, I think we lose Egwene, and it's Perrin who we see who goes into the river headlong with his horse, and then he loses his horse, and he swims across the river.
Rand
and then
Mad and Tom.
and then later he's going to meet up with Egwene on that side of the river. And then Rand, Matt, and Tom end up staying together, and they're the ones who find the boat, who find Doman's boat on the river, and they're attacked by Trollocs.
Yes. So they jump in the boat while they're being attacked by Trollocs.
Yep. And the boat shoves off and is downriver very quickly.
Yep. So you've got this crew and captain having random people jump on their boat, but then the threat of random people jumping on your boat became secondary to the threat of things they thought were stories.
But once that's dealt with, Doman wants to know why he shouldn't throw them off his boat.
Yes.
There's Trollocs over there. Not my problem.
Not my problem. So I think that's a good place to end for this time around. So we'll start again with chapter 21.
Yeah, because that's probably gonna be a longer and probably end up with some ranting, because that's when Nynaeve sneaks up on Lan and Moiraine, is able to stealthily sneak up and eavesdrop on them, and it shocks the crap out of Lan.
Well, and this is a little plot hole too, because not only is it a weakness in Lan that he usually doesn't have, but Moiraine should have sensed her.
She does. Yeah, we'll get into that.
Oh, I must have missed that part. I mean, it takes a year to get through all of them, and then
Moiraine is annoyed at herself when she realizes it. So he does address that. So we'll get into that, because it's a great scene that not only gives you a good, because we've lost all the other characters now, so we've had a large ensemble, and so now we're all split up. So this is
also where we start seeing the books through other people's eyes than Rand's.
Yes.
So that's important
because
too.
we split off now. We get to see things through Nynaeve's eyes. We get to see things through Perrin's eyes, and we're gonna get to spend more in-depth time with these different characters because they're now in smaller groups.
Which is why it bothered me that Rafe and this one can't be accounted for with the Hollywood woke rules, is he still could have done it through Rand's perspective in the beginning and had all of the other diversity that he was talking about. But he wanted to have everybody included from the beginning, not in an inclusive woke way, but an inclusive character way. And I think it diluted a lot of the mystery that comes forward. So
all right, so we'll rant about that next time.
All right, well, yeah, that was good. Teasers coming forward. We got to do, you wanted to do a fitness one here soon. We probably do that one this weekend. Then we need to, I want to do a follow-up on COVID because of all the backtracking the authorities are doing right now. And then coming up, if we can get it, the schedule part worked out, there's a person who makes small documentaries that wants to be on the show, and we're going to talk the old social justice angle. I watched this documentary, and it's not extremely woke, but it can be used by the woke, and I don't know where he stands exactly. And so the first part, we'll just let him talk about his show, and as any author talking about their book or whatever. Then we kind of need to establish where he is on that spectrum that I bring up all the time. Where are you on this, of the people who support this movement? I think he's going to be a number 2, just from watching the show and talking to him. And then, we'll go from there, and we'll probably have a little bit of debate on
Yeah.
the degree of what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. If he's a number one, it's going to be a crazy debate. If he's a number two, I think it's going to be a little bit more, it's going to be a lot more like our other discussions, but with a different take on the severity of different things. So
Yeah.
so we'll see how that goes. It at least be something different, and bring in some people with a different audience, because I mean, he was invited by the Spurs to talk about his documentary to the team. So
Wow.
it's not like it's completely illegitimate. So this
Yeah.
could be a big step for us.
Cool for him.
Yeah.
So that'll be a fun discussion. All right. Well, we'll see y'all later then.
All right. Later.